Welcome back to History Chatter. This week we're going to talk about a recent controversy about the so-called dancing girl of Mohenjo Daro. Some of you may be familiar with the story. On 18th of May, the World Museum Day, an exhibition in Delhi was inaugurated, and the Ministry of Culture had chosen the famous, or now infamous or controversial, the dancing girl or so-called dancing girl of Mohenjo Daro. The controversy is about whether it should be kept nude or it should have been clothed. It has been clothed and in quite strange colors by the organizers, and it's been chosen as the mascot of this International Museum exhibition. We were trying to find whether or not it's appropriate. How do we appropriate cultural artifacts, cultural objects which go back several thousands of years? I was looking for some reading material, and I came across a wonderful paper by my old friend and colleague, Dr. Ashish Kumar, who teaches history in Punjab University, Chandigarh. Ashish has written this wonderful paper. Ashish, of course, has written about 20 papers in the last 10 years. His area of interest is trade, forest, and cities in South Asia, in ancient India, to be more precise. But in 2019, 4 years ago, Ashish wrote this wonderful paper on the career of the dancing girl, or the so-called dancing girl of Mohenjo Daro. The paper is really about how this identity of a dancing girl came to be imposed, as it were, on this bronze figurine. I'll ask much more about this history to Ashish, but let me first welcome Ashish to our show and ask a very basic question. What do you think about this controversy, Ashish, around the dancing girl, since you've written that wonderful paper?
Thank you, Anirban, for having me. I've gone through this entire controversy, and now just let me start with the way this mascot has been introduced by the authorities. So it's basically being claimed that it's kind of a contemporized version of the so-called dancing girl, which belongs to the Harappan civilization and was found in the famous city of that time, Mohenjo Daro. And it is also being called a Dwarpal, which is quite interesting, and which is something very new. Okay, no one has before called or associated this Dwarpal or doorkeeper identity with this image. Now, when I look at the responses or how the people have reacted to this mascot image, then there are two types of criticism or questions that are being raised. One is related to the color of the skin of this mascot, which is pinkish. And it is being argued that, okay, originally the color was dark and now it is being turned into pink in order to make it more Aryan white for people like. Now, I have an issue with this criticism. Actually, as everyone knows, this image is made of bronze, and it's casted by following the lost wax process. So now bronze artifacts are made. They usually are of shining surface and carry the lighter color. So originally, when this image had been casted, it was not dark.
Dark, okay.
It becomes dark when bronze is exposed.
Wears out.
And it develops a patina layer. Okay. Brownish, dark color. So when it was actually manufactured, it was not dark. Okay. The creator of that time was not thinking in these racial skin color terms. So imagining that, okay, this girl was of dark skin color. This was something which was imagined in the course of the 20th century, And the scholars have now then accepted and kind of internalized this idea. The other issue is associated with the nakedness or the nudity. Okay, that is associated with the original Mohenjo Daro girl. Now it is originally, no doubt, the girl was not having any clothes. Okay, the original image, if you see. But now she is clothed. She is wearing a blouse and a skirt. Okay, which makes her look more tribal or folkish. So nakedness, one can understand. Okay, the officials who are dealing with this remodeling, they found this nudity not suitable for the larger audience and the people in general, because nudity is generally associated with the idea of obscenity and immoral character. So that one can understand. But more interesting is the selection of clothes. She's not wearing sari. She's wearing a tribal folkish dress. Okay, which also makes her someone who didn't belong to the higher sections of the society, but rather to the lower social orders. And this was precisely the idea which the colonial scholars, who interpreted this, like John Marshall, they associated with it. Because, and this is the idea which have been carried forward by the people who recreated this image. So and she becomes a Dwarpa. She is not a woman who belongs to the inner sphere of the house, but to the outer sphere. So she is a public woman. So this idea of public women, this identity has continued, which is very much reflected by the choice of clothes that are put on her body by the creator of this mascot. So I think both who created it, this mascot, and who are responding to it, okay, criticizing it, they are both looking at the original image, the Mohenjo Daro girl image, from a very, very colonial perspective. They are trapped in that framework which was created in the course of the 20th century under the colonial authorities.
This is what then leads me to the basic question. Tell me more about the story of how the image was discovered. When and how was it discovered? And how did it come to be associated with the image of an Aboriginal girl?
Yes, look, if you look at the way the history of India developed, so before 1920, it was believed that, okay, history of India started with the arrival of the Aryans from Central Asia, and they introduced the higher civilization. And then in 1920s, these two sites, Harappa and Mohenjo Daro, okay, they were excavated. Harappa was in Sahiwal district of Punjab, and Mohenjo Daro in Larkana district of Sindh. Both are now in Pakistan. Dayaram Sahani, Rataldas Banerjee, both were involved in the excavation of it. And it was realized that, okay, this civilization belongs to the 3rd millennium BC. It was contemporary of the Mesopotamian civilization of West Asia. On the basis of it, on 20th September 1924, John Marshall, who was the Director General of Archaeological Survey of India at that time, he announced the discovery of a new civilization which was pre-Aryan, so which means it was non-Aryan, and the announcement was done through Illustrated London News. So in this way, the civilization was discovered. So in 1926, 1927, Dayaram Sahani was excavating this Block 7 area of the Mohenjo Daro. And in this Block 7 area, there was this house number 55 in the 9th lane. And within this house number 55, there is one room, which is room number 40. So when he was excavating this room number 40, he came across this Mohenjo Daro girl image, this bronze image. Interestingly, the room is identified as a bath, and the image is found near a fireplace. And two other artifacts which are found in the same room. One is a copper spoon, and another is an elephant statue. So in this way, this image was originally found.
So that then brings me to the next question. An image is found inside a room where you also find two other artifacts, a spoon, a ladle, and an elephant statue, which appears to be something like a bathroom of sorts, a large one probably. How does an image which is found inside a room near a fireplace in what appears to be a bathroom along with an elephant statue then gets to be called a dancing girl? Who keeps a dancing girl statue in a bathroom?
It's a very interesting story, because what was actually happening, these archaeologists were digging the sites and they were collecting all material, and the decipherment part, it was being done by John Marshall, who was the Director General, and he was working with a civilization of which lots of archaeological material was available, but no text was available. The script was not deciphered, is still not deciphered. So there was no text available which could be used to explain the meaning and purpose of these artifacts. So John Marshall was using later date Sanskrit literature like Vedas and the subsequent literature, and he was also using his own experience in India, and in addition to that, lots of common sense. For example, he was also identifying the utility of certain artifacts, like if you found a bowl or a thali or a spoon or some weapon, so you can very much identify that, okay, their identity by identifying the utility. But the same was not possible with this bronze image of a girl. And when you look at this image, okay, I will just briefly describe like how it looks. So it's a tiny image, 10.8 centimeter long and around 5 centimeter broad. It's the image of a slender girl. She's standing upright, head is slightly tilted backward, left leg is bent at knee, and right hand is on the hip. Left hand is on the thigh, and she is possibly holding some object in her left hand, which is missing. She is entirely naked, but lots of jewelry is there. So she's wearing a...
Yeah, I heard that she's wearing some 24 bangles, you wrote.
She's wearing around 24, 25 bangles on her left arm, and then there are around 4 bangles on her right arm. And the hairs are tied in bun at the back of her head. So now, when this image reached into the hands of John Marshall, he identified 3 key features associated with it, which have played an important role in constructing the identity of it. One is nudity. She is naked. So therefore, he immediately concluded that okay, because she is nude, she is not wearing clothes, so she possibly belongs to a lower social order or someone who doesn't belong to the inside of a household. She is someone who is a public woman, something like that. And she identified her as an aboriginal girl. So she's not Aryan. She is different from the Aryans. Okay. The third, he identified the profession. That is very interesting. He identified her as a dancer, a professional dancer. And when I read the report that he wrote on Mohenjo Daro, there he uses an expression for this image, this Mohenjo Daro girl image. He calls this image the young aboriginal notch girl. The expression notch is very interesting because notch is an anglicized word for nach. And when you look at
in fact, the title of your article is the Sahib's Notch Girl.
So when I was looking at the 18th and 19th century scenario, I came across lots of references in Christian missionaries, travelogues, writings of Europeans related to the Nach girls or Notch girls. They were women, public dancers. Their dances were organized for entertainment, not only by the Indian elites, but also by the European officials who were living in India away from their family, and so they needed some entertainment. So these dances had become quite popular. So I feel like possibly this image of a Notch girl was somewhere in the mind of John Marshall when he identified this bronze image as a dancing girl. So in this way, this nudity, this Aryan non-Aryan debate, and this Notch girl, they played an important role in shaping this object's identity.
Ashish, I had another question in mind which I found in your paper. You make a very interesting distinction in terms of gender between the archaeologists' response to Harappan figures. And they have, in fact, these things are not taught in Indian schools anymore. But I was reading Mackay yesterday, and he has a long chapter on religion. There's not so much on religion being taught in schools about Harappa these days. But early on in the 1930s, apparently there was a great deal of concern whether there was some kind of a precursor. Harappa was some kind of a precursor to Aryan or Vedic Hinduism. That debate has since died down, I think, in the last 20, 30 years. But in terms of gender, you make a fascinating distinction between the male figures and the female figures in Harappa. You suggest that the archaeologists interpreted most female figures, because they were nude, as somewhat less civilized, less in control of their mind, compared to the male figures which were clothed, and they were interpreted as more civilized, more intelligent. The figures of the priest king, for instance, is supposed to be of a priestly order, which is part of the ruling class, and the figure of the females appear to be aboriginals, of dancing girls, and so on. So they made a conscious distinction in terms of gender between these Harappan figures which were built or made at the same time. I found that fascinating. Do you want to add to that a little? Because that part I didn't plan to ask, but it came across very nicely in your paper and I could not resist myself.
Yes, when the colonial scholars, they started studying Indian religion, they developed certain theories in the course of the 19th century, and which continued again when the Indus Valley civilization was discovered. So it was argued that the religion, the pure religion, the higher religion is always the religion which is devoid of idol worship, rituals, which is more mental,
abstract.
Okay.
Yeah.
But and therefore they argued that when you talk about the Vedas, in which no idol worship is mentioned, and when you talk about Buddhism, which talks about asceticism, such ideas, no idol worship, then they were considered as higher type of religions. And it was argued that as this Aryan culture spread in India, interacted with the non-Aryan culture, it was debased, degenerated.
Right,
Lots of this non-Aryan practices like this fertility worship, idol worship, magical rites, rituals, they become part of the religion,
the so-called Aryan religion.
So the Aryan blood also degenerated. Okay, so all this was argued. So in this way, the Vedic Buddhist religion becomes a higher type of a religion, and the Puranic Hinduism become kind of a degenerated type of a religion. So this distinction was maintained. So when these artifacts related to the Harappan civilization were found, lots of female figurines were found. In most of the cases, they are not wearing clothes. Half nude, semi-nude images are there. Bronze image of a dancing girl is also like that. So it was argued that these images were for rituals, and particularly ritual associated with the fertility cults, or the term they popularized was mother goddess cults.
Right, so, that's right, mother goddess.
So they become a cults associated with the plebeians, the people of the
of an inferior variety,
lower social orders. And then there are also some of the images, male images which are found, in which they are shown, like there is a Pashupati Shiva image, which is very popular. So he's shown, it's believed that this person who is sitting and surrounded by elephants, like animals like elephant, lion, rhinoceros, buffalo, he's a kind of a Shiva in a Pashupati form. He's a yogi in Dhyan. Okay, he's meditating. So it was argued that this meditation, this yoga aspect, it's connected with the mental sphere. So it's more of a higher order, which is mostly was associated with the elites or the higher priest of the Harappan society. But this mother goddess cults, these fertility cults were related to the lower social order. So it was believed that okay, there were multiple cults which were existing in the Harappan society.
Yeah, so both some sort of a polyphony, but also there was a clear hierarchy between the cults.
Because
The male cults were of a more sophisticated variety, according to the
I
archaeologists.
just mentioned that okay, because no text associated with this civilization was available. So they started using the later date text and started interpreting these artifacts in the light of those later date Sanskrit text.
Let me come back to the so-called dancing girl, and I am now going to call it so-called every time I mention it, and I advise our listeners also to do that, because this image has to be shed if we are serious about our scholarship and about our history. Thank you so much, Ashish. But let me come to the next question. Why and how did this figure come to be so special, as though it somehow embodies some sort of an essential feature or quality of the Indus Valley civilization? Whenever someone talks about Indus Valley civilization, one either talks about the so-called dancing girl or that priest philosopher king figure with the beard, as though these two figurines in some way carries the essence. If you see them, you've seen almost all of the Indus Valley civilization. How does such a large and diverse culture and civilization, which had yielded millions of artifacts probably, come to reside in these two major figures? Why are these two figures so charged with symbolism?
The first reason is because these were the earliest artifacts which were found. So when in the 1920s excavation was going on, only two major sites had been identified. One was Harappa, another one was Mohenjo Daro, which were also called twin capital of this civilization. And in spite of large number of artifacts which were found, this bronze image of a girl and that priest, so-called priest king image, they were not found in anywhere else. So it kind of made them unique. And another thing is, like, again and again the archaeologists associated with the clone from Europe as well as India, they have been talking about these two figures again and again in their writings. For example, if I look at the writings of E.G.H. Mackay, Stuart Pigott and Mortimer Wheeler, I see that they have continuously talked about this image from this girl's image from Mohenjo Daro. For example, E.G.H. Mackay, who was also associated with the excavation of Mohenjo Daro, when he talks about this image, he calls it Devdasi.
Yeah. In fact, he does something funny. He also says apparently that the Devdasis enjoyed quite an honorable position in society.
Actually,
it's a paradox.
Because if you look at the Devdasi practice, it has continued up to the 19th and the early 20th century. And there were many Devdasis who were associated with different Hindu temples. In the early 20th century, when E.G.H. Mackay was writing about Harappan civilizations, he was also kind of establishing a connect between the modern times and the ancient times. But then Devdasis were again public women. They were associated with the temples, that's why they were honorable. But still, when you read E.G.H. Mackay's writing, he says that they possibly were associated with some type of dances in which they had to dance without clothes. Okay. So in this way, this idea of a public women, this identity of public women has remained attached to it. And then again, it's Stuart Pigott. If you look at his writing, he again goes a step further. He says that the girl possibly belongs to the Kuli culture of South Balochistan. He says that these Karma traders, they would have bought these girls from Balochistan and brought to the Harappan or Mohenjo Daro for public entertainment or for their own entertainment. So such identities have been again and again associated with this image. And again, if you look at Mortimer Wheeler, okay, again he was the last Director General of Archaeological Survey of India, and he has been very influential, at least in the 50s and the 1950s and 1960s in India and Pakistan. He was an advisor to archaeological activities in both the countries. Now, Mortimer Wheeler calls her an Aboriginal dancer, a provocative and skillful dancer. He says that, okay, she appears to be very confident, and he calls her a little Baluchi girl of 15 years of age. So you see that, okay, for a long period, continuously the three features, nudity, Aboriginal identity and dance, they have emphasized upon by the scholars. Even the Indian archaeologists have done the same, like K. N. Dixit. K. N. Dixit says that, okay, the image belongs to a negroid girl who belonged to a lower social order. So again, this has been again and again emphasized upon in different writings, and that's why it has been very popular.
I feel so strange that we hold this animated debates about changes in school textbooks, but nobody takes up this questionable depictions like the dancing girl and how much it was and it is an insult to all Indian women. But moving across, you make plenty of references to the presentist orientation of archaeologists. You also write about a heated debate between India and Pakistan about the ownership of these artifacts and, the rather controversial exchanges during and after the partition. You cite an article in 2014 where a Pakistani museum director accuses India of stealing this figure, of borrowing it from Pakistan and never returning it, as if this figure is something like Kashmir. And I was amused. Why don't you tell us that story? What happens in 1947 and how did this girl become an Indian property and that bearded priest king became a Pakistani property?
It's again a very fascinating story. Now, actually, what happened that in 1947 partition happened, and two nation state came into existence, and both needed a history. Every nation needs a history. So there was a history up to 1947 of India, undivided India. But now when a partition happened, then Pakistan needed a history in order to justify its very presence. And Indian also needed to redefine their historical lineage, roots. So what happened that, and again, what happened on the eve of partition that around 12,000 artifacts from Mohenjo Daro, Harappa and other sites, they were in New Delhi. Mortimer Wheeler has brought these artifacts to Delhi for some exhibition which never happened. And the partition happened. So Pakistan archaeologists and officials demanded all the artifacts back to Pakistan because all the major sites of Harappan civilization at that time were in Pakistan, Harappa, Mohenjo Daro. And there were only minor two sites in India. One was Rangpur in Gujarat and another one was in Kotla Nihan Khan in Punjab, East Punjab. So Indian officials refused to give all the artifacts. They said that it also belongs, this civilization also belongs to us. So then Mortimer Wheeler mediated and the settlement was done. It was decided that all the artifacts would be divided 50-50. But then it was not possible to divide this image of a girl from Mohenjo Daro and that so-called priest king image again from the Mohenjo Daro. So Indian archaeologists and officials refused to hand over both the images to Pakistani archaeologists and officials. So they asked them to choose any one of these. And interestingly, and this is again, it's not...
I know, but I wanted to tell this story to our listeners. Yes.
I believe that Pakistani officials decided to take priest king instead of this nude girl's image, so that they could avoid the religious backlash that could have invoked by the nudity of this girl's image from Mohenjo Daro. So in this way, This image was left in India, and the priest king image went to Pakistan.
To Pakistan.
And then
this is a fascinating story, and then it finds a place in what we now call a national museum.
Yes.
In fact, I read in art historians' account that both these countries went quite aggressively to develop institutions which would be called national museums, as if the collection of artifacts in these national museums would somehow represent to the visitors a microcosm of India. If you visit national museums, you have an experience of seeing India or India's history within an enclosed space. That was more or less the idea of creating museums. So something which is discovered 25 years ago is once again reinstalled within a museum and now described as an essential part of India. Not just an essential part of India, but something that carries an essence which is probably 5,000 years old. Like we have the life of the prince in a bird, we have the life or the nation of India in a micro form within that girl. And this entire process of museumization or, curating the nation afresh after independence is a fascinating process in itself. How did this new life of an old object transform history? How do museums transform history really?
Look, this Harappan civilization, okay, when you look at the history of the subcontinent, you will see that it was a major civilization. And somehow before 1947, it was established and accepted and even internalized by even the Indian scholars and other people that India's history starts from this civilization. But then 1947 happened. So again, I'm repeating the line that okay, all the major sites have gone to Pakistan. And Pakistani archaeologists, they were claiming that okay, now their history starts from the Indus Valley civilization, not the history of India. And in order to justify or create a new history for Pakistan, an ancient history of Pakistan, Mortimer Wheeler wrote the book 5,000 Years of Pakistan, which was published in 1950. And Mortimer Wheeler says that okay, Pakistan had come into existence when Harappan civilization came into existence. So India's civilization...
And Indians were worried that Pakistan would now be called older than India.
Because what Wheeler was arguing that, okay, now the sites belong to Pakistan, all this Harappa, Mohenjo Daro. So Pakistan is the actual owner of this, custodian of this civilization. And India's civilization starts with the arrival of the Aryans. So chronologically, Harappan civilization appeared by the 3rd millennium BC and Aryans entered into India according to the chronology in 2nd millennium BC. So Pakistan becomes
2nd millennium, mid-2nd millennium. Yeah, that's right.
So Indians would not have accepted it.
So that created a flutter in Delhi, I'm sure.
Yes. So after that, Archaeological Survey of India dedicated all its energies to find Harappan sites, and this obsession is still going on. So you see Rakhi Gadi, you see Kalibangan, you see other sites, and they are still saying that okay, we also have a claim over the Harappan civilization. That's why the new terminology, Sindhu Saraswati Sabhyata or Indus Saraswati civilization, because Indians are also saying that okay, it also belongs to us. We also started from this civilization. So this conflict between India and Pakistan related to the ownership of this civilization has also entered into the historiography. So this has shaped this politics related to the museums. So that's why this image of a girl becomes important, because it shows India's connection with the Mohenjo Daro and ownership of some remnant from Mohenjo Daro, which helps in putting forth or strengthening this claim over this civilization.
Right. Thank you so much, Ashish. I don't want to stop, but I must conclude this session because there are limits to how long we can possibly go on. You spoke about the discovery of the bronze figurine. You spoke about how it was characterized by the existing prejudices and experiences of the colonial archaeologists. You also spoke about how partition added a new dimension to the career and possibly the characterization of this little bronze figurine. And you also spoke about how India and Pakistan continues even today to fight over which one of them is older as a civilization. All of this we can learn from a minor controversy about whether or not this so-called dancing girl should be kept nude or be made to wear clothes. And I hope our listeners also gained a great deal of information and insight from this wonderful discussion with Dr. Ashish Kumar, who teaches in Punjab University, Chandigarh, and is an acknowledged expert in ancient Indian history. Thank you so much, Ashish. I'd like to have you over again whenever there's another similar controversy about an ancient Indian artifact comes up. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all next week. Thanks for watching and listening to History Chatter.